talk about it, at least Heritage Foundation. Seymour, you were asking us exactly what he means by this.
Trying to interpret it.
Yeah, trying to interpret it. So, you know, we talked about yesterday, it was down on, you know, 180 points isn't what it used to be, and 125 isn't that much either. We have these little fluctuations, but the bottom line is we're almost at new highs again. We hit new highs for the S&P, and we're close with the Dow, so there's a lot of other things happening with China and separate from China in the economy right now.
Yeah.
What
Look, you know, Joe, when you look at what happened, I'm a pro-Trump guy. Obviously, I worked with him on the campaign on the economy. The stock market was at 18,000 the day before the election, and now it's closing on 27,000. You know, if my math is right, that's close to a 50% increase in equity values in 2.5 years. So it's a damn good record on the stock market. Now, those comments, I was trying to decipher exactly what Steve Mnuchin was saying. I know Stephen. I know he's really dedicated to trying to get this deal done, both for policy reasons. They think it's going to be good for the economy, but also they understand the implications politically if they don't get a deal done this year. But, you know, to use an overused football cliche, there's a big difference between being on the 10-yard line and scoring a touchdown, right? You know, 90% of the way there is fine, but it's oftentimes, Andrew, you know, that last 10 yards, and that's what tripped them up last time. So I take some umbrage in that comment, but I wouldn't overreact to it either.
Do you think when you say they understand the political implications, you mean that Stephen Mnuchin and the administration understand that if they don't get a trade deal done and the tariffs weigh on the economy as you're heading into an election year, it's going to be much tougher?
Yeah, and look, you know, I agree with that 100%. I think the administration understands that. Now, look, that doesn't say Trump is just going to take any deal, but I think it makes it easier to get a deal done. And by the way, this isn't going to be solved. You know, this trade dispute isn't going to be solved in the next year or two. This is going to be the epic battle of our times. This is going to go on for 10 or 15 years. The other thing I would say is, if they get the deal done, if they get from 90% to 100%, Joe, then I think you're talking about a big boom. I mean, the upside on the economy and the stock market for getting this done are just huge. I think you're talking about Dow 30,000 easily. I mean, it releases the animal spirits of the economy. I talked to Fred Smith, the CEO of FedEx recently. He's a good friend. He said these tariffs are really killing us. They're killing us. They're killing our business. Now, he does a lot of business in China, but that's just one little example of businesses that have been hurt by the tariffs.
That would surprise everyone, because the issues that supposedly are most important to us are issues that aren't going to be solved. China would have to fundamentally change the way it does business.
Yeah, what are the chances of that?
And they're saying that's not going to happen.
I mean, and that's why you have to use, look, I support what Trump is doing. I understand that this is having a negative impact on the economy, but I personally, and I think most Americans are behind Trump when we recognize.
But this could be the long game, Stephen. This could be like a Cold War.
This could be. That was exactly my point. And you take it step by step.
So how do we get what does a 100% deal mean? That we get some soybeans sold or something?
Yeah, I think it means the Chinese agree to buy more
tariffs.
Stuff.
Tariffs come off.
Kind of managed trade thing. You're going to buy more of our soybeans. You're going to buy.
And
more.
Who knows with Huawei too?
And then, Joe, there's going to have to be something on the intellectual property. I hear the administration talking more and more about that. The question, of course, is the Chinese. I've talked to our negotiators. They say we can get them to agree verbally.
Right, but not into law.
But we can't get them to agree to the metrics to make.
And to put it into law.
Same with a lot of deals.
Do you have a brilliant idea about how you solve the Huawei problem?
Yeah,
not just intellectual, but not the intellectual property problem, but the national security problem.
Well, I mean, the sanctions on Huawei, I think, were exactly the right thing to do. I think that's hurting, as they've even admitted, is hurting that company very significantly. Other than that, I mean, I would just stick with the program. I think that's working. And you are right that Huawei is an incredibly abusive company in terms of national security. And also, I've gotten calls from companies all the time that say, Huawei they're overt in terms of stealing.
No. On the intellectual property issue, I think there's not a question, and clearly that, I don't know if it could be resolved, but it's resolvable to the extent that you could come up with a pact around intellectual property across the board in China.
But that they don't steal anything else. I mean, but their stuff is built on stolen.
Well, if you open up the market, B, if you actually believe that there were going to be enforceable protections that the Chinese government were going to have, not just around Huawei, but around all Chinese companies, that's something that's solvable. The national security piece is much harder to solve, because the second you say you're either a national security threat or you're not.
Right.
Well, Joe made a good point about, is this a new Cold War? And I think it is. And remember, in the 80s, we had significant technology transfer, restrictions on what was sold to the Soviet Union. We may need to revisit that. One quick thing, I know we're coming to a break. Joe, you said, they have to change their legal system on intellectual property, but even that isn't enough. I mean, they already passed a law last year saying we're not going to steal your intellectual property anymore. It's just words on a piece of paper.
So a deal could be just a tariff deal where we really don't get that much, but we don't go to 25%. And
well, it'll
expand,
it'll expand U.S. markets to China in a very productive way. It'll help the farmers. It'll help some.
But then to be continued with all the other stuff, and it's not over.
In my opinion, that's not going to get resolved quickly. I mean, it's very difficult. The Chinese, by the way, a lot of the Chinese governments, they even deny that they're stealing our intellectual property. So, the first step of a resolution is to admit that you have a problem. They won't even admit that right now.